For 300 years, humanity had been the gentle giant of the galaxy. While other species built weapons and conquered worlds, humans built schools. While other empires measured power and destroyed planets, humans measured success in translated books and shared music. The Galactic Concord had expected monsters when they first met humanity. Every species that reached the stars eventually showed its teeth. That was the rule of the universe. Power corrupted, technology enabled destruction. It was simply how things worked. But humans broke the rule. Their first contact ship carried no weapons. Instead, it carried musicians, poets, and translators. The human captain had learned 3 alien languages before the meeting and brought gifts of Earth art, wine from ancient vineyards, books of poetry, recordings of symphonies that made alien listeners weep without understanding why. The galaxy did not know what to do with such a species. Over the centuries, humanity became the great peacemaker. When 2 empires threatened war, they called the humans. When ancient enemies needed to talk, humans provided the table. They established cultural exchange programs on 100 worlds. They translated literature between species that had never spoken. They sent artists on their warships because they believed beauty could prevent violence. Many species thought the humans were fools. Kind fools, perhaps. Useful fools, certainly, but fools nonetheless. Ambassador Elena Vasquez was the greatest of these fools. She stood 5 feet tall with gray hair and warm brown eyes. She spoke 9 alien languages fluently. She had memorized the founding stories of 12 different civilizations. In her 40 years of service, she had stopped 17 wars with nothing but words and patience. Elena believed in humanity's mission with her whole heart. She believed that kindness was stronger than cruelty. She believed that culture could bridge any gap. She believed that if humans showed enough grace, the universe would eventually learn to be graceful too. She was stationed on Harvest Colony when her beliefs were tested. Harvest was a farming world on the edge of human space. It had no military value, no strategic importance. It was simply a place where 2.3 million humans had chosen to live peaceful lives. Farmers worked the fields. Teachers filled the schools. Families raised children under an orange sky. The colony's only notable feature was its library. Elena had helped build it herself. It contained books from Earth and dozens of alien worlds. Farmers would come in after work to read poetry from species they would never meet. Children learned that the universe was vast and wonderful, and full of stories worth knowing. Elena loved that library more than anything she had ever built. The Cre Dominion had watched humanity for decades. The Cre were conquerors. They had built their empire on fear and violence. They understood only one language, strength, and when they looked at humanity, they saw weakness. They saw a species that had voluntarily dismantled its greatest weapons. They saw a people who had converted battleships into cargo vessels. They saw diplomats who brought poetry to negotiations instead of threats. The Cre saw prey. Their war council made the decision in secret. They would not attack Earth directly. That might unite the galaxy against them. Instead, they would strike a soft target. They would show the universe what happened to species that chose culture over power. They chose Harvest Colony. The attack came without warning on a quiet morning. Elena was in the library when the first explosions shook the building. She ran outside and saw Cre warships filling the sky like a swarm of metal insects. Landing craft were already touching down in the fields. The colony had no defenses, no weapons, no soldiers. The humans had believed they did not need such things. Elena tried to contact Earth. She tried to reach the Galactic Concord, but the Cre had jammed all communications. Harvest Colony was alone. The massacre lasted 4 hours. The Cre soldiers moved through the colony with terrible efficiency. They killed farmers in their fields. They killed teachers in their schools. They killed families in their homes. They made no distinction between adults and children. They took no prisoners. Elena gathered survivors in the library. Perhaps 200 people huddled among the books while the world burned outside. She tried to keep them calm. She told them help would come. She told them humanity would not abandon them. She did not believe her own words. When the Cre finally reached the library, Elena made a choice. She could hide. She could beg. She could try to negotiate, though she knew the Cre had no interest in negotiation. Instead, she chose to be human until the very end. She walked to the library's main hall. The shelves were burning around her. Smoke filled the air. Through the broken windows, she could see Cre soldiers approaching. Elena picked up a book from the floor. It was a collection of Earth poetry, its cover singed but still readable. She opened it to a random page and began to read aloud. Her voice was steady. Her hands did not shake. She read about love and loss and the beauty of existence. She read about humanity's hope for a better universe. She read about kindness as a choice, not a weakness. The Cre soldiers entered the library. They saw a small, gray-haired woman standing among burning books, reading poetry as if she had all the time in the world. They did not understand. They could not understand. Elena finished her stanza. She looked up at the soldiers with eyes full of sadness but no fear. She had spent her life believing that culture could save humanity. She still believed it. Even now, the soldiers raised their weapons. In her final moment, Elena Vasquez smiled. Not at them. At the words she had just read. At the species she had served. At the belief that kindness mattered, even when it cost everything. The Cre killed her. They killed the survivors hiding in the back rooms. They burned the library to ash. Then they left. They left behind recording devices. They wanted the galaxy to see what they had done. They wanted every species to understand the price of weakness. The recordings reached Earth 6 hours later. Humanity watched in silence as Harvest Colony died. They saw the farmers cut down. They saw the children murdered. They saw their great library burn. And they saw Elena Vasquez. They saw her stand among the flames and read poetry to her killers. They saw her smile at the end. They heard her final words, though the audio was poor and broken. Something about choice and kindness and what it meant to be human. The galaxy expected humanity to weep. They expected protests and diplomatic complaints. They expected the poets to write sad verses and the musicians to compose mournful songs. They did not expect the silence. For 3 weeks, no human ship left port. No human ambassador answered calls. The cultural exchanges stopped. The translation programs went dark. Humanity retreated into itself and said nothing. In the halls of the Galactic Concord, the Cre ambassador laughed openly. He declared that the humans had finally learned their place. He announced plans to strike more human colonies. He invited other species to join in the conquest of such an obviously weak civilization. The other species said nothing. They watched. They waited. Something was happening inside human space. Something no one could see clearly. But those who lived closest to the border reported strange things. Shipyards that had been dormant for centuries suddenly activated. Archives that had been sealed since humanity's peaceful revolution were being opened. Old men and women who had once been warriors before the era of kindness were being summoned to meetings. The humans were remembering something they had deliberately forgotten, something that would change everything. The silence from human space lasted exactly 21 days. In those 21 days, the galaxy told itself many stories about what was happening. The optimists said humanity was mourning. They would emerge with sad eyes and gentle words, ready to forgive. The pessimists said humanity was broken. They would emerge as beggars, seeking protection from stronger species. The Cre said humanity was dying of shame. They would emerge as slaves, finally understanding their place in the universe. None of them were right. Deep beneath the surface of Earth, in bunkers that had not been opened for 3 centuries, lights flickered on for the first time in generations. Dust covered everything. The air was stale and cold, but the machines still worked. They had been built to last forever, or close enough. Admiral Marcus Stone walked through these forgotten halls with a heavy heart. He was 73 years old. He had spent his entire career converting weapons into tools of peace. He had personally overseen the transformation of 17 battleships into university vessels. He had written papers about how humanity had evolved beyond violence. He had believed every word. Now he walked past sealed containers labeled with names that made his stomach turn. Sunbreaker, Silence Protocol, The Long Night, Species Termination Device. These were not weapons of war. War implied rules, limits, the possibility of surrender. These were weapons of extinction. Humanity had built them centuries ago, during the dark years before the peaceful revolution. They had built them because they were very, very good at destruction, better than any species the galaxy had ever produced. When humans committed to violence, they did not stop until nothing remained. The peaceful revolution had not happened because humans grew weak. It had happened because humans looked at what they were capable of and felt horror. They had sealed these weapons away. They had forbidden the knowledge of their construction. They had rewritten their entire civilization around kindness because they were terrified of what they might become if they did not. Admiral Stone stopped before a massive vault door. Behind it lay the complete archives of human military science from the dark years. Weapons that could crack planets. Strategies that could exterminate species. Technology that made the Cre's greatest weapons look like children's toys. He placed his hand on the scanner. It read his DNA, his brain patterns, his emotional state. A voice from 300 years ago spoke. Authorization required from United Earth Council. Warning. Contents of this vault were sealed by unanimous vote of humanity. Opening requires proof of existential threat. Stone thought about Harvest Colony. He thought about 2.3 million dead. He thought about Elena Vasquez reading poetry to her killers. The Cre Dominion has declared war on human civilization, he said. They have massacred a civilian colony. They have announced plans to continue. They do not seek negotiation. They seek our destruction. The vault considered his words. Then it asked a question that made Stone's blood run cold. Do you authorize the use of contents against the Cre Dominion? Understanding that such use may result in complete species termination, Stone closed his eyes. He remembered his grandfather's stories about the dark years, the things humanity had done before they chose kindness, the planets that no longer existed because humans had decided they should not exist. Not yet, he said. I authorize recovery and preparation only. Final authorization will require council vote. The vault door opened. Cold air rushed out, carrying the smell of ancient machinery and forgotten nightmares. 3 days later, Admiral Stone stood before the United Earth Council. The council chamber was silent. Every seat was filled. Representatives from every human world watched through screens. This was not a normal session. This was the most important decision humanity had made in 300 years. Stone activated the holographic display. Images filled the chamber. Ships unlike anything the modern era had seen. Weapons that bent the laws of physics. Strategies that read like horror stories. For 3 centuries, Stone said, we chose to be kind. We looked at what we were capable of and we decided to be better. We sealed away our weapons. We forgot our strategies. We converted our warships into schools. He paused. Every eye was on him. We did this because we wanted to believe the universe was good. We wanted to show other species that there was another way. We wanted to prove that kindness was strength. He changed the display. Harvest Colony appeared. The dead. The burning library. Elena Vasquez's final moments. We were wrong. The chamber remained silent. Stone could see tears on many faces. He could see rage on others. He could see fear on some. The universe is not kind, Stone continued. It never was. We knew this once, before we chose to forget. We knew that some species only understand one language. We knew that some enemies cannot be reasoned with. We knew that kindness without strength is just an invitation for cruelty. He deactivated the display. The Cre believe they have taught us helplessness. They believe our culture made us weak. They are preparing to attack more colonies. They have invited other species to join in our destruction. Stone looked across the chamber at his fellow humans. Leaders, scientists, teachers, artists, people who had dedicated their lives to peace. I am not asking you to become monsters, he said. I am asking you to remember that we can be monsters if we must. I am asking you to authorize the recovery of our sealed archives. I am asking you to rebuild our fleet, not for revenge. Revenge is emotional. And what I am proposing is not emotional. He straightened his spine. I am asking you to show the Cre and the galaxy what happens when humanity stops choosing to be kind. Not because we want to, but because they have left us no other choice. The vote was unanimous. Within hours, shipyards across human space roared back to life. Factories that had not produced weapons in centuries began working around the clock. Scientists who had studied only peace opened forbidden archives and began remembering old lessons. The galaxy noticed. Of course they noticed. Human space had been quiet for 3 weeks, and now it burned with activity. Ships were being built. Weapons were being forged. Something was awakening that had slept for 300 years. The Cre noticed too. But they were not worried. They had seen humanity's modern fleet, cargo ships and university vessels. Nothing that could threaten the Dominion. They did not understand that modern humanity had deliberately forgotten how to fight. They did not understand that the old humanity had been something very different. They would learn. On the 21st day after Harvest Colony, humanity broke its silence. A single message was broadcast across every communication channel in the galaxy. It reached every species, every world, every ship. It was not encrypted. It was not hidden. Humanity wanted everyone to hear. The message was simple. It contained no threats, no demands, no anger. It simply said, "We remember now." 3 words. That was all. But across the galaxy, the oldest species felt something they had not felt in millennia. Something ancient and primal. A fear that went beyond logic or reason. They remembered the stories. The old stories, from before humanity chose kindness. Stories about a species that had nearly destroyed itself, with its own capacity for violence. Stories about weapons that could unmake stars. Stories about a rage so cold and patient that it could wait centuries for satisfaction. The old species began to quietly move their assets away from Cre space. They knew what was coming. The Cre did not. The Cre Dominion controlled 47 star systems. Their empire had grown through fear and violence for 4,000 years. They had conquered 12 species. They had destroyed 3 others completely. Their military was the terror of their region of space. They were not afraid of humanity. Commander Thex of the Cre Third Fleet received reports of the human activity with amusement. Yes, the humans were building ships. Yes, they were forging weapons. But the commander had studied human history. He knew their peaceful revolution had destroyed their military knowledge. They would have to learn warfare from scratch. It would take them decades to become a threat. By then, the Cre would control all of human space. Commander Thex ordered his fleet to advance on the next human colony. They never arrived. The fleet of 97 warships entered a region of space known as the Hollow March. It was empty space between star systems. Nothing should have been there. The fleet vanished. No distress calls. No battle reports. No debris. 97 warships carrying 18,000 Cre soldiers simply ceased to exist. The Dominion sent scouts to investigate. The scouts vanished too. They sent a second fleet, larger than the first. This one traveled a different route. They were careful. They watched their sensors with paranoid attention. It did not matter. The second fleet made it further than the first. They actually saw something before they died. Just glimpses on their sensors. Shapes that moved too fast to track. Weapons signatures that their computers could not identify. And then, silence. One damaged ship managed to escape. Its crew was dead from radiation exposure, but its recording devices still functioned. The Cre High Command watched the footage with growing unease. The human ships looked nothing like the cargo vessels and university boats the galaxy knew. These were predators, sleek and dark and bristling with weapons that seemed to bend space around them. They moved with a coordination that suggested a single controlling mind. They struck from angles that should have been impossible, and they showed no mercy. The recordings showed Cre ships trying to surrender. White flags, open communications, offers of negotiation. The human ships destroyed them anyway. Not with anger, not with passion, with the cold efficiency of a machine completing a task. The Cre High Command realized they had made a terrible mistake, but it was far too late. Across the galaxy, other species watched with a mixture of horror and fascination. The peaceful humans, the poets and diplomats, had become something else entirely. Reports came in from Cre space daily, each one more disturbing than the last. Human ships appeared without warning and vanished without trace. Cre military installations were destroyed with surgical precision. Supply lines were cut. Communication networks were shattered. The Dominion's mighty empire was being dismantled piece by piece, and they could not even find an enemy to fight. The Galactic Concord called an emergency session. Every species sent observers. They needed to understand what was happening. Ambassador Yen of the Veth Collective had known humanity for 2 centuries. She had studied at their universities. She had danced at their celebrations. She had considered them friends. She did not recognize what she saw now. Human space was dark. The communication channels that had once broadcast art and music and poetry were silent. The cultural exchange programs had been replaced with military logistics. The smiling diplomats had been replaced with cold-eyed officers who spoke in clipped sentences and revealed nothing. Ambassador Yen requested a meeting with the human delegation. After 3 days, she was granted one. Admiral Stone received her in a bare room with metal walls. No art, no music, no comfortable chairs, just a table and 2 seats and harsh lighting. Yen had known Stone before the massacre. He had been a gentle man who loved music and laughed easily. The man before her now had eyes like chips of ice. "We need to understand what is happening," Yen said. "The Cre are being destroyed. Their fleets are vanishing. Their worlds are going dark. This is not the humanity we knew." Stone was silent for a long moment. "The humanity you knew chose to be kind," he finally said. "We built our civilization on the belief that the universe would respond to gentleness with gentleness. We were wrong. But this," Yen struggled for words, "this is extermination. You are not fighting a war. You are erasing them." "Yes." The simple agreement made Yen's blood run cold. "Why?" she asked. "The Cre attacked one colony. What you are doing is beyond any proportional response." Stone leaned forward. His voice remained calm, almost gentle. "Ambassador, when a predator attacks your village, you do not kill only the predator. You find its den. You find its young. You find every member of its species that might threaten your village again, and you make certain they can never hurt anyone else. The Cre are not animals. They are a civilization." "They were a civilization," Stone corrected. "In 6 months, they will be a memory." Yen felt sick. She had come seeking explanation, perhaps even reassurance. She had found neither. "The galaxy is afraid," she said. "Every species is asking the same question. If you can do this to the Cre, what stops you from doing it to anyone?" Stone considered the question. "Nothing," he said. "Nothing stops us except our choice not to. That was always true. We simply stopped pretending otherwise." He stood. "You knew us as poets and diplomats. You knew us as teachers and artists. You thought that was all we were. You thought our kindness meant we were incapable of cruelty." He walked to the door. "We were kind because we chose to be. The Cre taught us that some situations do not allow for kindness. We have adapted. We remember now what we chose to forget." He paused at the door. "Tell the galaxy this. We have no interest in conquest. We have no interest in empire. When the Cre are gone, we will return to our libraries and our music and our poetry. We will be kind again." His eyes met Yen's. "But we will never again pretend that kindness is all we are capable of. We will never again seal away our weapons and forget how to use them. We will never again trust the universe to be gentle, simply because we are gentle." He opened the door. "The Cre made us remember. That was their choice. What happens next is simply consequence." He left. Yen sat alone in the cold room for a long time. When she reported back to the Galactic Concord, her voice trembled. "We thought we understood humanity," she said. "We thought they were gentle by nature. We were wrong. They are not gentle by nature. They are gentle by choice, and they have stopped choosing." The chamber was silent. "What do they want?" someone asked. Yen shook her head. "They want the Cre gone. After that I do not know. They say they will be kind again. They say they have no interest in conquest." She paused, but I looked into Admiral Stone's eyes. There is something different there now. Something old and cold. I do not think it will ever fully go away. The galaxy watched and waited. And in the dark spaces between stars, human ships continued their cold work, erasing an empire that had dared to teach them that kindness was weakness. The lesson would not be forgotten by anyone. The Cre homeworld had never been attacked. In 4,000 years of conquest and violence, no enemy had ever reached the heart of the Dominion. The homeworld sat protected by 17 defensive rings. Each ring contained thousands of weapons, platforms, automated defense systems, and patrol fleets. The combined firepower could destroy an invading armada 100 times over. Beyond the rings, the home fleet waited. 3,000 of the most powerful warships the Cre had ever built. They had never known defeat. They had never even been seriously tested. The Cre leadership retreated to this fortress as their empire crumbled. They watched system after system go dark. They received no reports from their outer fleets. Their mighty empire was being erased from the edges inward, and they could not stop it. But they believed the homeworld was safe. Nothing could break through 17 defensive rings. Nothing could defeat the home fleet. The humans might destroy everything else, but the heart of the Dominion would survive. They were wrong about many things. This was their final mistake. The human fleet arrived on a quiet morning. Sensors detected them first. thousands of ships emerging from faster-than-light travel just beyond the outer defensive ring. The Cre military responded immediately. Weapons powered up. Fleets moved into position. The defensive rings activated their automated systems. Then the sensors updated their count. 17,000 human ships, almost 6 times the size of the home fleet. The Cre commander felt the first touch of true fear. Where had these ships come from? Human space could not have produced such a fleet in mere months. This was impossible. He did not understand that humanity had built these ships centuries ago. They had been stored in hidden facilities across human space, waiting for a day that most humans hoped would never come. In 3 months, they had simply been awakened. But the commander rallied his courage. Numbers were not everything. The defensive rings would thin the human fleet. The home fleet would finish them. The homeworld would survive. He gave the order to engage. The battle for the outer ring lasted 4 hours. It should have lasted days. The defensive platforms fired everything they had. Thousands of missiles, billions of energy beams, weapons that could crack moons. The human ships danced through it all. They moved with perfect coordination, as if guided by a single mind. They exploited weaknesses in the defensive grid that the Cre did not know existed. Their weapons cut through armor that should have been invincible. They did not fight like a military force. They fought like surgeons removing a tumor. The outer ring fell. Then the second ring, then the third. By the time the humans reached the inner rings, the Cre commander understood that the battle was already lost. His forces had destroyed perhaps 200 human ships. They had lost half their defensive capacity. He ordered a retreat to the final ring. He sent desperate messages to any ally who might listen. He prepared the home fleet for a last stand. Then the humans did something unexpected. They stopped. The human fleet hung in space just beyond the final defensive ring. They did not advance. They did not fire. They simply waited. The Cre commander did not understand. They had the advantage. Why stop? A communication request came through. The commander accepted it with shaking hands. Admiral Stone's face appeared on the screen. He looked tired, sad, even. But his eyes were cold and steady. "Commander," Stone said, "I want you to understand what is about to happen." The Cre commander found his voice. "You cannot break the final ring. Even your fleet is not powerful enough. We are not going to break the final ring." The commander blinked. "Then what? Look at your star." The commander switched to external sensors. The Cre sun burned as it always had. Steady, reliable, the source of all life in the system. Then he saw the human ships near it. Not warships. Something else. Something massive that his sensors could barely comprehend. "We call it the Stellar Manipulation Array," Stone said. "We built it 300 years ago, when we were less kind. We sealed it away because we believed no one should have such power." The commander watched the massive device position itself near the sun. "We can destroy your star," Stone continued. "We can make it expand and burn your world to ash. We can make it collapse and freeze everything in this system. We can do things to it that your scientists cannot even imagine." The commander's blood turned to ice. "But we are not going to destroy it," Stone said. "Destruction would be too quick, too merciful. You taught us that mercy is weakness. We learned the lesson well." The device activated. On the Cre homeworld, day turned to night. The sun flickered like a dying candle. Temperature dropped instantly. Across the planet, billions of Cre looked up at their dying star and screamed. Then the sun stabilized. Not normal, but stable. A wounded star giving off half its usual heat. Enough to survive, not enough to thrive. "We wounded your sun," Stone said. "Your world will survive. Your people will survive. But your crops will fail. Your industries will struggle. Your civilization will spend the next century simply trying to stay alive." The commander could not speak. "This is not revenge," Stone said. "Revenge is emotional. This is simply consequence. You taught the galaxy that kindness is weakness. We are teaching the galaxy that attacking humanity is extinction." He paused. "Your fleets are destroyed. Your empire is gone. Your son is wounded. You have nothing left but survival. This is what mercy looks like when humanity stops being kind." The communication ended. The human fleet began to move. Not toward the final ring, around it. They were not interested in the homeworld anymore. The demonstration was complete. In the Cre command center, the commander watched them go. His world was plunged in cold darkness. His fleet was destroyed. His empire was erased. And the humans had not even bothered to finish the job. That was the worst part. The Cre had been conquerors. They understood conquest. They understood destruction. They did not understand being dismissed. They did not understand being left to suffer in the cold. The galaxy watched the wounded sun flicker in the darkness of space. They watched the greatest military power in the region reduced to struggling survivors in a single day, and they understood the message. Humanity had shown restraint. They could have destroyed the Cre completely. They could have made their sun explode and killed every living being in the system. They had the power. They chose to leave the Cre alive. Crippled. Humiliated. A living warning to anyone else who might mistake human kindness for weakness. The demonstration was complete. The lesson was taught. Within hours, 17 species sent messages to human space. Not threats, not demands. Simple messages of peace, offers of friendship, promises of cooperation. They had seen what humanity could do when it stopped being gentle. They had no desire to learn that lesson personally. Admiral Stone received these messages in silence. He felt no joy, no satisfaction. He had spent his life believing in peace, and now he had commanded the greatest military action in human history. He had won, but he was not sure what victory meant anymore. In the cold darkness of the Cre system, a wounded sun flickered, and across the galaxy, every species looked at humanity with new eyes. The poets had become something else, and no one would ever forget. 50 years had passed since the Cre War. The galaxy called it a war, though it had lasted only 6 months and only one side had truly fought. The Cre Dominion was gone. Their empire was dust. Their homeworld survived. But barely. The wounded sun still flickered in the darkness, and the Cre people spent their days simply trying to grow enough food to survive. They would never threaten anyone again. The Galactic Conquered had changed as well. Before the Cre War, it had been a loose collection of species with competing interests. Now it was something else. Something more unified. Something bound together by a shared understanding that some mistakes could not be undone. The emergency session that followed the war had drawn representatives from every known species. Even the ancient ones who had not participated in galactic politics for millennia. Even the distant ones who barely acknowledged other civilizations existed. They all came because they needed to understand what humanity had become. Admiral Marcus Stone stood before them. He was older now, his hair fully white, his face lined with years of difficult decisions. Behind him, holographic displays showed the remnants of the Cre Dominion. Empty systems, silent stations, a wounded sun flickering in eternal twilight. "You are afraid," Stone said. "I can see it in your eyes. Every delegation, every species. You look at us now and you wonder if you are next." No one denied it. For 300 years, we were your friends, your teachers, your diplomats. We shared our art and learned your songs. We believed that kindness could change the universe. He paused. We still believe that. But we understand now that kindness must have teeth. The display changed. Human ships appeared. Not the predatory warships that had destroyed the Cre, but something different. Mixed fleets. Cargo vessels sailing alongside battleships. University stations protected by weapons platforms. Cultural exchange programs operating in the shadow of military power. "We are not abandoning our principles," Stone said. "We will still send artists to your worlds. We will still translate your literature. We will still believe that culture and connection are what make existence worthwhile." He looked across the assembly. Thousands of alien faces watched him, some with fear, some with respect, some with something that might have been hope. "But we will never again pretend that kindness is all we are capable of. We will never again disarm ourselves and trust the universe to be gentle. We will never again give predators the opportunity to mistake our mercy for weakness." He straightened his spine. "This is humanity's new doctrine. We offer the galaxy 2 choices. The first choice is friendship. Be our friends, and we will share everything we have. Our science, our art, our technology, our protection. We will move stars to help those who stand beside us." His voice hardened. "The second choice is hostility. Attack us, and we will respond with everything we have. Not revenge. Revenge is emotional. We will respond with the cold, patient efficiency you witnessed in the Cre War. We will not stop until the threat is eliminated completely." He let those words hang in the air. "We do not want the second choice. We hope we never have to make it again. But every species in this chamber needs to understand that we can make it. We are capable of it. The weapons we used against the Cre still exist. The knowledge we recovered still survives. We will never seal it away again. The assembly was silent. Choose friendship, Stone said. Please. We want to be kind. We want to share poetry and music and art. We want to believe in a universe where kindness matters. He turned to leave, then stopped. But if you choose hostility, understand what you are choosing. The Cre thought we were weak. They thought our culture had made us soft. They learned otherwise. He walked out of the chamber. The galaxy had received its answer. In the years that followed, something remarkable happened. The galaxy became more peaceful than it had ever been. Not because humanity threatened anyone. The human fleet rarely deployed. The terrible weapons gathered dust in hidden facilities. But everyone knew they existed. Every species that considered aggression looked at the flickering sun in Cre space and reconsidered. Every empire that thought about conquest remembered what happened to the last empire that attacked humanity. Every predator that saw weakness in kindness remembered that human kindness was a choice, not a nature. The peace was not perfect. It never could be. But it was better than anything that had come before, and humanity returned to its old ways. Mostly, the cultural exchange programs resumed. Human artists traveled to distant worlds. Human translators learned alien languages. Human diplomats helped negotiate peace treaties. The libraries reopened. The universities accepted students from across the galaxy. But there were differences. Every human ship now carried weapons. Every university station had defense capabilities. Every cultural exchange came with a quiet understanding that humanity would protect its own. The smiles were still warm. The poetry was still beautiful. The kindness was still genuine. But behind it all was something harder. Something that had not existed before the Cre War. Humanity had learned to be kind and dangerous at the same time. On Harvest Colony, a memorial stood where 2.3 million humans had died. Black stone carved with names. A flame that never went out. A place where humans came to remember what kindness had cost them. Beside the memorial, they had rebuilt the library. Larger than before. More beautiful. It held books from 100 worlds. Children came to read stories from species they would never meet. In the center of the library, a special room held a single item. A book of Earth poetry. Its pages still scorched from the fire that had killed Ambassador Elena Vasquez. Beside it was a plaque with her final words, recovered from the broken recordings of that terrible day. We choose to be kind. Never forget that it is a choice. The words meant something different now than they had when she spoke them. She had meant them as a statement of principle, a belief that kindness was strength. Now they meant something else. They meant that kindness was possible only when you had the power to be cruel. They meant that gentleness was meaningful only when backed by strength. They meant that humanity's choice to be kind was not weakness but discipline. Ambassador Yen of the Veth Collective visited the library on the 50th anniversary of the Cre War. She had known Elena Vasquez. She had admired her belief in the power of culture. Yen stood before the scorched book and the plaque and felt tears on her face. She mourned for the woman who had died reading poetry to her killers. She mourned for the innocent humanity that had died with her, but she also understood. Elena had been right. Kindness was a choice. But she had been wrong too. Kindness without strength was just an invitation for cruelty. The galaxy had taught humanity that lesson, and humanity had learned it perfectly. As Yen left the library, a human child ran past her laughing. The child carried a book of alien poetry, excited to read stories from a species on the other side of the galaxy. The child's parents followed, smiling and gentle and kind, just like the old humanity. But on the father's belt was a small device, a communicator that could summon help in moments, a connection to a fleet that could crack planets and wound stars, kind and dangerous, gentle and powerful, poets with teeth. That was humanity now. That was what the Cre had created when they taught the universe that kindness was weakness. Perhaps it was better this way. Perhaps the galaxy needed to know that some species could choose to be gentle. Perhaps peace required the possibility of violence. Yen did not know. She was not sure anyone knew, but she knew one thing. The warning that had been added to every diplomatic protocol in the galaxy. The words that every ambassador taught to every student. The lesson that no species would ever forget. Humans are wonderful friends. They will share everything they have. their art, their science, their love of existence. But do not make them remember what they used to be. You will not survive what they become. The galaxy had learned. Humanity had taught them, and the scorched book in the library remained as a reminder that once, humans had believed kindness was enough. They would never believe that again. But they would still be kind, because it was a choice, and they would always choose it, as long as no one forced them to choose otherwise.